You're about to hear a uniquely and totally Australian band. It's called Gondwanaland Band, and the musicians, Peter Carolyn, here on the keyboards, and on there's Eddie Dukeman, and I'm standing with Charlie McMahon, who is holding a didgeridoo. Before we hear it, what does it sound like? Tell me, describe it.
Well, I think it sounds like the ground speaking in a way. It's very much a ground instrument, and it's a sort of a sound. A very good test of it is the way that animals can pick up on it. And if there's any people out there, any listeners, and you've got dogs or cats, we'll bring them inside, because I think they'll really groove on this one.
And show me how you play it before we get started.
We'll use a lip vibration and a circular breath.
All right, having done that, I'm going to get out of the way because I want to hear the didgeridoo.
Okay. Righto. Let the dog out. This is called bull ant. Woo! There's danger out there. Woo!
200 years. When the first white settlers landed here in Australia, there were about 300,000 Aborigines scattered across the continent. For these nomadic and primitive people, the arrival of civilization was a disaster. Now, 200 years later, Aboriginal culture survives. We went to Australia's Northern Territory, a town called Yirrkala. It's an Aboriginal town where the people have maintained a body of tradition that may be the oldest on Earth.
These people are Yolngu, and they're the people who have been living here for perhaps 40,000 years. They are the people who are of the land, part of the land is in them. That's not just a mystical thing. That has real meaning in terms of economics, in terms of politics, in terms of customs, their traditions. They're all part of a whole. I don't know of any people in the world of whom it's more true that the whole culture is of the whole cloth. All the activities that are marked by being part of Yolngu culture, Yolngu tradition, are important to them. Fishing with spears, collecting shellfish, gathering bark for paintings. Those aren't just activities that they continue to do because of some romantic attachment to the past. They're all part of Yolngu learning about the resources of their environment and learning how to use them. They are essential parts of Yolngu culture.
I remember the way that things were carried out in a normal Aboriginal way. I remember accompanying my mother by going into that billabong out there to collect lilies and everything else that need to be collected. Long time before missionaries and everybody else ever came to this place. People never used to use clothes, never used to wear clothes at all. I mean, it was just normal. That way of living is very quickly being eaten up. Aboriginal people are being pushed out, their land's being taken, their spirits being destroyed, they're being physically killed off, and then the land is empty. It might be empty, but their spirit is still there. Their memories are still there. Their bones are there.
What I miss now is like in the old days, the grandmother sitting around the campfire telling us stories till we used to go to sleep. She'd sit there and tell us stories about the land, about people. In the old days, they used to really have big clan fights, like tribal fights, that sort of thing, like what happened in the past. To my children, I want them to grow up to be really strong people, strong for the land, and strong for our culture. All little boys have to go through a circumcision ceremony, and that's been our culture since the old days.
The Dapi ceremony is a boy's first step into manhood, and that involves learning, involves a very stern discipline of acquiring knowledge about the clan traditions. And everybody's there to see it. The whole community is involved. It is for them something which marks, which signifies continuity for them, the continuity of their culture. All of which is important not only for its own sake, but also tells something about people's relation to land.
Aboriginal people live and die, so as everybody else. But Aboriginal people never die. We physically die, but our spirit lives on.
In a moment, an urban Aborigine tells why his people are still the underclass here in Australia. This is Today in Melbourne.
About after 8 this morning, we want to talk a little bit more about Australia's Aborigines. The Yirrkala Aborigines, whom we've just seen in that remarkable piece of footage before we went to a break, were fortunate. After years of struggle, their land claims were finally recognized when the federal government passed the Northern Territory Act in 1976. But for many Aborigine people throughout Australia, the picture is not nearly so bright. Let's give you some startling statistics. Aborigines have a life expectancy 20 years less than other Australians. Their unemployment rate is 6 times higher, their income levels half as high, their rate of imprisonment 16 times as high. With us this morning are Australia's Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Clyde Holding, and Michael Mansell, an activist for Aboriginal rights and only the second Aborigine lawyer in Tasmania. And good morning, gentlemen. Thank you both for being with us.
Our pleasure.
First of all, what kind of racism are we talking about here? Mr. Mansell?
I think you're talking about racism that extends right across the whole Australian community. You're talking about historically a race of people who invaded this country and who said for the purpose of their law that Aborigines didn't exist at that time. You're dealing with a federal government who instead of saying, well, that law is wrong and Aboriginal people do have rights which are inherent because of their race, are prepared to allow Aboriginal people to be beggars in their own country for some land.
How deeply does it run? I mean, can you buy a house anywhere? Can you walk into a restaurant?
Yes,
I can. Can you sleep at a hotel?
Yes, I can, but there are many Aborigines who can't, especially the dark-skinned ones. There's discrimination right across the board in Australia. For example, you're getting Aboriginal people who are being killed in custody by police. I think in Australia, police have a licence to kill Aborigines. You have an imprisonment rate, for example, per 100,000. In the United States, 250 people per 100,000 are imprisoned. In Australia, you've got 1,300 per 100,000. Now, those are examples of how deeply embedded racism is in this country.
Let me get Mr. Holding in on this. How do you account for a survey that showed that many Australians still think Aborigines are a privileged group here?
Well, there's a level of latent racism, and in some parts of Australia, I think the further north you go, the worse it gets. One of the problems that has to be remembered is that Aboriginal people are a very small percentage of the population.
About 1%, 160,000
The average Australian
total, right?
has never met an Aboriginal. And when they think of Aboriginals, they tend to think in terms of stereotype. Yirrkala is easy. Michael Mansell has trouble in Tasmania because it's only recently that the Tasmanian government, the state government, has really recognised the existence of Tasmanian Aborigines. But let me say this, those statistics are evidence of the level of social dispossession. They are the result of a history of occupation which this government is wrestling with. What Mike Mansell has overlooked in terms, for example, of return of land, by comparison, In the United States, American Indians have about 4.2%. In Canada, it's less than 2%. In Australia, not taking into account what currently is happening, we're already at around 12%.
But we're told that's land nobody else wants.
No, I think that's an exaggeration. Certainly if you go to the Northern Territory and talk to the government up there, if you talk to some of the mining groups, they wouldn't agree with that.
Let's talk about prospects for change. Realistically, what can you hope to do? I mean, in order to change the system, don't you need white support, or don't you need more power of the ballot box?
We do, but we need an Australian government that's going to stand on principle, that has the courage of convictions, and at the moment the Bob Hawke Australian government doesn't have that. I think what they are doing is reflecting the racism that's in this country.
That's absolute nonsense.
They are not prepared.
Michael, it can't be borne out statistically. The Hawke government, in a period of economic downturn, has spent more on Aboriginal welfare and development than any other government in Australian history.
That's the difficulty, because
now,
the
it's not
Australian
just a question of money. It's also a question of trying to... I mean, Aboriginal people talk about self-determination. We are trying to encourage that at every level.
Well, I was going to ask you, what is the objective? I mean, is the objective to absorb Aborigines into the mainstream?
Not at all, no. Our objective is to produce a level of equality so that Aboriginal Australians can live as Aboriginal Australians, proud of their heritage, proud of their culture, and in a socio-economic position where they have the same opportunities as every other Australian.
Separate but equal?
No, I don't think it's separate but equal. I think at this stage you're looking at a group that's severely disadvantaged. And if you're going to deal with that, you've got to solve the problem of disadvantage. And then you've got to a position of social and cultural equality.
What would satisfy you?
Well, I think that the Australian government must come out with a bold statement on principle that Aboriginal people we are not beggars for land that we owned, that the land is ours as of right, and that we should be able to...
Oh, but wait a minute. The 99% of the people who live here now are not going to just up and leave. So it's unrealistic to say, hey, it's our land, give it back.
But what we're not saying that they should leave. What we are saying is that Australia is a very big country and there's room enough for two races of people. But what the Australian government are prepared to do is to force Aboriginal people to beg for some pieces of land back. Small tracts that, as you quite rightly said, nobody else wants and the mining companies do not want to go into.
Look,
and the Australian government's response...
I can't allow a situation where he talks about begging. The Victorian government, in conjunction with the Commonwealth government, has just referred to us legislation which will vest in Aboriginal people in this state those areas which they have traditionally occupied. In a government of a different complexion, Aboriginal reserves have gone back. There's been a great passage of land.
I've got only seconds left. Are you optimistic about the future?
Yes, I am. It's going to be difficult, but I think I can be optimistic.
Do you see any reason for that optimism?
No, none at all. Not while the Australian government's got its current approach to Aboriginal people.
The problem's long-standing. We're not going to solve it here, but we do thank you for enlightening us, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clyde Holding and Michael Mansell. We're going to come back in just a little bit. There's more ahead in a special edition of Today from Melbourne, Australia on NBC.